Town of the Tall Man, Part 2. He swallowed and forced himself down the hall to the right, making his way to the hotel bar. His skin crawled, being here again after so long. It didn't help that the bar, like everywhere else, was devoid of anything living. What unfathomable set of circumstances would have the bar of a casino desolate, no matter what hour? "Hey, stranger!" called a voice behind him, making him jump. He turned around to see a man sitting at a table nearby. Hadn't that table been empty a moment ago? How could he have missed this person? "Hello," he said. "Do you know where the staff are? There's no one at the front desk, and I was hoping to check in." "Night auditor just stepped out," said the man, gesturing to the seat before him. "Come, join me for a bit. He'll be back soon." Gareth took the seat across from the man, placing his duffel bag on the floor as he took in this new companion. The indigenous man was certainly local, with a wizened appearance not unlike one of the elders he used to know. He had long black hair spilling down around his shoulders, and gave him a massive gleaming smile. He wore a suit and hat, pressed clean and straight, and giving off an air of refinement Gareth had not encountered in anyone for some time. What caught his attention most of all, though, was the man's stature. Gareth wasn't short, but the man towered above him, effortlessly breaking 6.5 feet. Despite his age, he seemed no less weaker for it. And even through the suit, he could tell that the man had a fitness that would be the envy of those decades younger than him. Gareth almost felt himself shrinking before the man's gaze from the other side of the table. "Thank you for joining me," said the man in his almost methodical dialect. "Always enjoy talking to those passing through. Would you like something to drink?" He gestured with his lips to something in front of him, and Gareth's eyes fell on a shot glass containing a white, creamy liqueur. Gareth knew it well. This had been his favorite. He had kept a bottle of it in the kitchen fridge and in the spare fridge in the garage. He had used it to unwind after long days at work and on the weekends when he had time to himself. It had been there for him when nothing else was. He hadn't tasted it in a year. "I don't drink," he said. "My mistake," said the man. "Hope you don't mind." He took Gareth's shot as well as the one before himself and downed both. "Can't let it go to waste." He extended a hand. "Call me Mr. Blackwater." "Gareth," he replied, shaking the man's clammy hand. "Why's there no one here?" "This town's been in an odd state for a while," said Blackwater, releasing his tight grip and reclining. "Tough times. Casino's not doing as well as it used to, more stores are closing, and it's all weighing on everyone even more." He grinned. "But so long as my town stands, I have a plan." "Your town?" asked Gareth. "Are you on the council?" Blackwater chuckled. "No," he said, shaking his head. "I'm not for politics. I'm an entrepreneur, and soon this town will be spearheading something that will take the Midwest and beyond by storm." He reached into his coat and pulled out something from inside, its form in the clothing somehow hidden from Gareth's view. He handed it to Gareth, who found himself looking at a long can. A grape-flavored concoction courtesy of Blackwater Beverages. "Energy drinks?" Gareth asked. "All the rage," said Blackwater. "College kids cramming for exams, office workers pulling all-nighters, everyone will be drinking these. I have a natural recipe that makes the big brands taste like nothing but sugar and chemicals, and I can sell these cheaper." He waved a hand at him. "Take it. I've got plenty more. One of those will get you where you need to go. Hopefully not far." Gareth took the can but didn't open it. Far too late to even be trying it, as appealing as it looked. "Thank you so much," he said. "Thankfully, I don't have much further to go. Just going up north past St. Kolb's." Blackwater's smile faded. "I see," he said. "Well, hopefully it helps get you through the day." He got up from his chair and tipped his hat. "I'll be going. Tonight's the start of something big around here. I can feel it as surely as I do my own time coming." "You aren't staying here?" asked Gareth. "I just come here for the travelers," said Blackwater. "You have a good night, Gareth Lalamont." Without another word, he turned around and walked off, whistling to himself as he made his way into the lobby. Gareth shuddered. A man who would whistle at night on a reservation either had no fear or was one to be feared. Then it hit him. "Wait," said Gareth, getting up from his seat to pursue the man. "I didn't tell you my last name." He burst out of the bar into the lobby, but it was as empty as when he had first came in. He looked around, but the man was nowhere to be seen. Gareth eyed the energy drink in his hand, and stuffed it into his coat pocket before returning to the bar to grab his duffel bag, abandoned by the table. He spared another glance for the shot glasses left there, tiny dregs of the liqueur still left in them. A part of him he hadn't felt in a year stirred, aching, pining. Never mind staying the night here. He had gas. He'd just drive the rest of the distance, pick someplace secluded, and sleep in the car. At this point, he'd rather take his chances out in the middle of nowhere than spend one more minute in this town. At least in the rolling fields, he wouldn't have this temptation within walking distance. He moved back into the lobby and stopped. A figure stood just inside the doors. It was a young man, early 20s, dressed in the uniform of one of the casino's gas station attendants. He was hunched over, arms and legs spread out as if trying to maintain his balance, swaying and lurching as he moved into the lobby. Gareth clung to the strap of his duffel bag, eyes locked onto the young man who threw himself closer one step at a time. The young man seized, then gagged, a stream of black viscous fluid erupting from his mouth onto the floor in front of him. Gareth yelped and jumped back, bumping up against the counter as he continued to stare at what was unfolding in front of him. The man somehow found more to spew out of himself before pulling his head back up and gazing back at Gareth. The same black fluid blanketed the man's face in glistening, oily strings, coming from his eyes, down his nose, out the corners of his mouth. The stench of the rank fluid stung Gareth's nose like a mixture of bile and rotting corpses someone had utterly failed to clean up using hospital disinfectant. I-E-L, the man heaved, hands shooting before him as he launched himself at Gareth. He fell back, pinned between the counter and his assailant as the man clawed at his coat and skin, raking at him with his nails before Gareth got his hands between them and pushed him away. The lunatic stumbled and fell like a rag doll, lurching and jerking as he tried to get himself back on his feet, all while more of that rank fluid leaked from him like a sieve. "Ellie!" the man roared, excruciation blanketing his face as he stared at Gareth, his eyes as black as the sickly liquid that now covered the lobby. He got on his hands and knees but didn't bother getting up, instead launching across the floor at Gareth, slipping in his own expelled bile but still keeping himself aimed at his target. Gareth yelled as he brought his duffel bag down on the lunatic, knocking him flat before kicking him in the stomach, shoving him a few feet away. The man lay on his side, covered in black grime, gasping and panting like a dog, eyes still black as night. He raised his head to look at Gareth again. I-E-L, he choked out, spitting out more of that noxious liquid. He got onto his stomach, crawling at Gareth, but now so weak he could barely manage a few inches at a time. Gareth stepped back, readying his duffel bag. "Stay back!" he yelled. "Is there a single person in this place? Someone come quick!" A loud crash overwhelmed the gurgling noises of his assailant, and down the hall he could see someone emerging into sight. Then another crack as a door flew open by the bar, accompanied by an unwanted but familiar cry. I-E-L-L-E! The figure down the hall took off like a bullet, barreling toward Gareth while something else crashed through tables in the bar. Gareth darted away, barely keeping his feet out of reach of the first attacker on the ground. He pushed open the casino doors and looked to his car but flinched back. He saw a fourth one of these afflicted locals, this one shoving a kitchen knife into one of his car's rear tires. "Uwasali!" cried out the vandal, forcing herself onto her feet and falling back onto his car. She spat out her own stream of the black bile, coating her casual clothes and long hair in filth. She locked onto him like a starving person on the last piece of bread, and lurched after him with no regard for every scrape, fall, and collision it took to close the distance. He ran off, gulping as he had to abandon his only known ride out of the town. He racked his brain for possible escapes, working vehicles, but of those who owned them, he could recall living in this town they had all moved out in the past year. More cries rang out from buildings as he passed them, shuttered shops and rundown homes with crooked, erratic shapes floundering past the windows. He hurled himself past the pitch-black post office, finally spying the still-lit shape of the IIHS emergency room and a cluster of bile-covered madmen stumbling about nearby. He darted into the alleyway that went around behind it, getting into cover before finally falling against the wall, gasping for air as the world around him felt like ice. Before he had a chance to calm himself, though, he heard something vomit nearby. He covered his mouth, trying to stomach the decaying stench that seemed to cling more to the town by the minute. At the front of the alleyway stood another one of the lunatics, barely into his 30s from what he could tell. So plastered with whatever that fluid was, Gareth couldn't even tell what he had been wearing. The lurker shot his head around, face pulled back as if looking for his own lost child, hyperventilating in the cold night. Gareth opened his coat, pulling out the energy drink given to him by Mr. Blackwater. He was still hidden by the darkness of the alleyway, but if he could draw the man's attention with a distraction, it might help keep them off his trail, at least for a bit. He threw the can out of the alleyway, it landing on the road nearby and exploding. Sizzling, dark liquid sprayed everywhere, and the afflicted's head shot toward the noise, fixing on it like a cat on a mouse. He jumped forward, landing face first in the sugary concoction, lifting his scraped and bleeding face up enough to let him lick at the ground. "Nan!" A stampede erupted from the other end of the clinic as the mob that had been by the front doors came down on the puddle of the energy drink, each scrambling in a desperate race for every drop. Gareth took the opportunity to move himself deeper into the alleyway rather than risk even one of them spying him if he made a dash for the front door. By the time the madman had finished with the puddle, leaving the one unfortunate enough to be there first broken and ripped apart, he had vanished around the side of the building. Gareth shuddered as he walked to where he remembered the back door being. Memories flooded back. Him waiting in the alley by the back door. Something hidden in his pocket. She came out the back, still dressed in her work uniform. He took her hand and led her to his car. He had a surprise dinner for her at the local bar and grill where they had gone on their first date. He remembered the last time he saw her wearing that ring. He shook his head, forcing the thoughts away and focusing on the horrors he could now hear all around him. They still took up the night air, not so much as a cricket making noise alongside them. The repeated gargles, each forced out as if it was a matter of life or death. What was the disgusting fluid pouring out of them from wherever it could? And how had an energy drink just saved his life? "What did you give me, Blackwater?" he muttered out loud. A shiver went up his spine, and despite the alleyway being empty, it felt like something was filling in around him. Any longer out here, and he'd lose his cool again. He got to the back door, locked. He tried it a couple more times, but it wouldn't budge. No windows near him, but the noise of breaking one would possibly attract the afflicted. The alleyway led to where it connected to some houses, but all too likely those now held people like those prowling the streets with a greater tenacity than any of the stray dogs ever had.